right, welcome back to Focal Point, AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. This is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio, 888-589-8840, number to call. Here's that story from Investors Business Daily. The FCC, goes back to what I was talking about earlier, the FCC has cooked up a plan to place, quote, researchers, end quote, in U.S. newsrooms, supposedly to learn all about how editorial decisions are made. But it goes on to, this is Ajit Pai, a commissioner with the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, warned this week in a Wall Street Journal op-ed that a plan to dispatch researchers, listen to this, into radio, television, and even newspaper newsrooms called, quote, the multi-market study of critical information needs, end quote, is still going forward. Now, that's what I want you to observe. The FCC sending researchers into radio studios, into television studios, into newspaper newsrooms in order to find out how they are deciding what stories they cover. Now, I got to tell you, this is frightening, ladies and gentlemen. If you believe in freedom, you believe in freedom of the press. And see, we are part of the press. This is freedom of the press. What you are experiencing right now is freedom of the press. We are the press. AFR, broadcast media, is another expression of the press. And that right is under severe threat. Now, one thing I want to address before we go back to the phones is you got a lot of evangelicals now that are talking about getting the government out of the marriage definition business altogether. They're saying, look, why should we even have the state issuing marriage licenses? Why don't we just get the government out of that whole business altogether? And let's just leave it up to the churches. Let's get the government out of that business altogether, and let's just make it a state issue. I mean, a church issue. Churches want to marry people. They want to give them some kind of certificate. Let's keep it there. Get the government out of the whole marriage business. So it's kind of like on the abortion issue being pro-choice but personally opposed. So I'm personally opposed to same-sex marriage, but hey, I'm pro-choice. If you want to go do it, knock yourself out. Now, I do not believe it is possible to get the state out of marriage definition, and I'll explain why. I'm looking at a piece by Francis Beckwith, and he gives just a hypothetical, but it illustrates why you'll never be able to keep the state out of the marriage business. And we don't want to for theological reasons. Let me say that up front. Remember, we read in Romans 13 that the state is a minister of God. 3 times Paul says that. The state is a minister of God. So when you have the state recognizing man-woman marriage, that is a minister of God exercising his priestly function to sanctify what God has sanctified. That's an appropriate thing for a minister of God to do. So it's appropriate for the state to be involved in that according to Romans 13. And also we're told, and in 1 Peter, that the role of government is to praise what is good. That is to endorse, to promote what is good. What is better than man-woman marriage for life? So when the state does that, it is carrying out a biblical responsibility of promoting and supporting and praising what is good. So we've got theological reasons to say the state ought to be involved in the marriage definition business. But here's what Beckwith very pragmatically spells out why you have to have the state involved. You can't get the state out of it. And he hypothesizes this couple, Bob and Mary, they're devout Catholics. So they get married in the Roman Catholic Church under the authority of the church. This is, again, you got no state involvement. The state's out of the marriage business. They don't sanction. They don't license. This is totally Bob and Mary getting married in the Catholic Church. State got nothing to do with it, doesn't know anything about it, doesn't recognize it, doesn't issue on them a license, nothing. This is all inside the church. So Mary decides to leave the Roman Catholic Church and converts to Unitarianism. And this is after they've had 3 kids. They've been married about a decade. They got 3 kids. She leaves the Roman Catholic Church, becomes a Unitarian. She decides she wants out of the marriage. So she goes to the Unitarian Church and she says, I want a divorce. And the Unitarian Church says, fine. Your husband believes all this antiquated stuff about contraception, about abortion, about same-sex relationships being sins. He believes all that hate stuff. So yeah, we're going to grant you a divorce from the Unitarian Church because you shouldn't be required to be married to somebody who's a hateful, homophobic bigot. So the Unitarian Church says, okay, you guys are divorced. So she goes to the Roman Catholic Church. They say, no, we don't recognize divorce in this church. So as far as the Roman Catholic Church is concerned, you are still married. Now, he goes on, what if the Unitarian Church not only grants a divorce that their original church doesn't grant, but also gives her custody of the children? They got 3 kids. Unitarian Church says there's no way your kids ought to be raised in a hateful, homophobic environment. We award you custody of all 3 children so that they're not raised in an abusive environment. So how do you solve all of that? And what happens if Mary decides, look, my church, Unitarian Church, has awarded me custody of the kids, so she just takes the kids and moves out of state? Is that kidnapping? Who is going to decide that? Can the Catholic Church tell the Knights of Columbus, okay, you go get Mary and the kids and bring them back to the state because she's still married in the eyes of the church, and we're going to put her on trial in ecclesiastical court for violations of canon law. If they find her guilty, can they put her in an ecclesial prison? Can they fine her? What the deal is? So what happens if Mary not only leaves, takes the kids, but she empties the couple's bank accounts? And the Unitarian Church says that's fine. You can take it. You're the wrong party here. You've been married to a homophobic bigot all these years. You have the right to all of the resources. And then she donates the proceeds to the Unitarian Church. Is that a crime? Who gets to decide that? And he says this, imagine that all these issues were addressed in private contracts that Bob and Mary drew up, because they say, well, just make a private contract. You can agree to anything you want. It's a private contract, and the only role of the state then would be to come in when you're dealing with issues of this private contract. Other than that, say got nothing to do with it. So imagine, Beckwith says, that all these issues were addressed in private contracts that Bob and Mary drew up and signed upon the commencement of their marriage in the Catholic Church. Who has the power to make sure these breaches are remedied and compensation is given to the wronged parties? The only way to resolve these disputes is for the state to intervene. What to do with children, property, state residency, freedom of movement, etc., when marital relationships break down, are public issues. They are not private ones. Consequently, in such a privatization of marriage scenario, the state would actually become more intrusive into ecclesial matters than it is at present. They get more involved in the affairs of the church, not only in family life, but also into church affairs. The court would have to spell out, the state would have to spell out the limits and scope of ecclesial jurisdictions, not to mention what religious bodies are permitted to do with married citizens from different religious traditions that hold contrary perspectives on everything from child rearing, spousal authority, and religious training to culinary practices. You just cannot keep the state out. If you've got a contract that's been broken, which is what happens in a divorce, if there's no just cause for it, then that's the proper role of the state to intervene and see that justice is done. So privatizing marriage, it cannot work. And beyond that, it should not work. The state has a proper God-given role in those issues. Well, let's grab a couple of phone calls before we're done. Let's go to Randy, Marshall, Texas. Randy, Marshall, Texas, welcome. What's on your mind?
Greetings, AFR listeners from Texas. I love Jesus, AFR, and Ted Cruz. What we need is a bunch of Ted Cruzes who have backbone, because if you put Mitch McConnell, John Boehner, and John McCain behind an x-ray machine, you would see no spine. And we need Louis Gohmert for Congress, head of running Congress, Ted Cruz running in the Senate, or better yet, the presidency, and maybe we can get something done back to America, put it back the way it was.
Yeah. All right, Randy, I appreciate the call. And so you'd like to see, if we could clone Ted Cruz, that'd be fine with you, is what I'm hearing. We just need more of him.
We need 200 Ted Cruz.
Yeah, may his tribe increase. Yeah, you think about it, Randy. If we had 218 Ted Cruzes in the House of Representatives, and we had 51 Ted Cruzes in the Senate, and we had a Ted Cruz in the Oval Office, we would be back to America as it was founded by the end of the first administration of that guy. It could happen. But we got to have guys like Ted Cruz who got a brain and a spine. So, all right, Randy.
God we trust.
All right. Thank you, Randy. Appreciate the call very much. Let's go to John, Mercer County. John, Mercer County, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Well, I heard you talking about the movie with Jesus without Satan, and it'd take an infidel to create such a movie because it's not possible.
Yeah. Well, and it's disturbing to me. And again, I don't want to criticize these people harshly because they're really trying to do a good thing. They want to bring the life of Jesus to the big screen. I commend them for that. I support them in that. But I think that's just a major mistake. Without Satan, you don't really, why do you even need Christ? If there's no Satan and none of his works to destroy, why does he even need to become incarnate in human flesh and die an agonizing death on the cross? I mean, what's the point of all that unless you've got a Satan and his works who need to be defeated? And the only way to do that is to go to the cross and be the sin bearer for all of the sins that Satan has tempted people to commit. All right, John, go ahead. Anyway, finish your thought. Anything else you want to add?
Oh, yeah, I want to speak on Common Core. It's a downfall for our future, our entire country.
Yeah.
And on the Muslim thing, I'm suspecting it'll come out just like the Common Core did. Nobody's knowing nothing about it, and first thing we know, if we don't take care of it, it's going to be in law.
Well, that's a concern I got. Thank you for the call, John. And that's a concern I've got with kind of creeping Sharia, that by the time the American people wake up, realize the danger that Islam represents to our national security and our freedoms, it's going to be too late. That's why we got to keep sounding the alarm. Now, to him who is able to strengthen you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ, to the only wise God be glory forevermore through Jesus Christ. Amen. Bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap. Never forget, we are fighting a winnable war. See you tomorrow.